Welcome to the Creative Corner, an opportunity for you guys to get inside the head, the heart and the soul of an author. And today we're on location in beautiful Mount Nebo, which is in the Moreton Bay area of Brisbane. And what's remarkable about this location is the book we're going to talk about today, it actually ends right here. We're going to hear a bit more about that. But before we do, let me introduce to you my guest, Franceska Jordan. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Ocean. It's lovely that you've been able to come up here and talk with me.
It's a beautiful drive. I absolutely loved coming up. A bit hairy on some of those corners, but hey, it's worth the drive. Well, before we kick off, I want you to tell us who is Franceska. Give the watchers a bit of a understanding of who you are.
Right. Well, I was born in Africa, in South Africa, Germiston, which is just a little town outside of Johannesburg. But it's grown, and so it's almost not a little town anymore. It's part of the big city. And I lived there until I was nearly 6, and then my mum was actually banned in South Africa for her trade union and anti-apartheid work. And she faced imprisonment, so we had to flee. So we fled South Africa and took the train to Zimbabwe, which at that time was Rhodesia, to Bulawayo. And so I had most of my education there. It's quite strange, as a young Jewish girl, I went to a Catholic boarding school called the Dominican Convent in Bulawayo. And yeah, I had most of my education there. I went junior school, high school, and then I went to university in Salisbury, which is now called Harare, which was the capital of Zimbabwe. And I've lived in lots of places in Africa, and one place that I have lived, which is Cabinda. It's an enclave between the two Congos, Congo-Kinshasa and Congo-Brazzaville. And I looked after 2 baby chimps while we lived in the Mayombe forest. So there's a chapter on that in my book. And then the Cubans invaded in 1972, and I was 8 months pregnant and had to flee. And so I was able to leave with a belly of, being 8 months pregnant, money in my pocket, escudos that I changed into Rhodesian rands, dollars, no, sorry, not rands, dollars, and flew out and had my first son in Zimbabwe.
Wow, that's just the beginning of a very long story, isn't it?
It is.
And that's what we're talking about today, which is your publication that's just been released, which is Under the Boab Tree.
Yes.
So tell us more about the story. We know it's your memoir, but it's written in a very unique way, isn't it?
It is. Yes, one of the reviewers said that this is an unusual memoir of an unusual woman from an unusual family. And the reason is that it's a creative nonfiction as well as a memoir, because the creative nonfiction part is that this character that a character in the book is a tree. And the tree is the wisdom reflective voice in the book.
Okay, so that's the Boab Tree. And well, where did the idea, obviously deciding to write your memoir is a relatively easy decision, but where did the idea come to write it in that way, to bring that character to life like that?
Well, it really came from, I went back to South Africa in 2016, and I went to research. My mother had started a memoir of 40 pages, which she never finished. So I went back to check on her notes, and I interviewed trade unionists and freedom fighters like Dennis Goldberg, who was imprisoned for 23 years as part of Mandela's group in the Ravonio trial. And I've had to face a lot of ghosts, really, my mother's, my father's, and my life, and also the life of people during apartheid, the cruelty of it. And so as a therapist, I went and sought a therapist to help me work through a lot of trauma that I've had in my life. And so I found a Jungian analyst, a brilliant woman, and I told her the story of how I used to climb a tree to get away from the violence in the home. And often my parents or my mother and my sister would be calling for me, and I'd be up the tree, and I wouldn't let them know that I was up there. It was the tree became my nature mother and father. That was my safe place, and I felt comforted in my tree. And when I told my therapist this, she was so taken with the story and how I found a way to protect myself and how I found solace from trees and nature, that the idea then came to put it in my book. And I just had a brilliant editor who's an Australian but lives and works in New York. And she got it, because not everybody, other people, didn't really see how my tree's voice was going to fit into this book. But she got it. And it developed from just being snippets in my book to being an italicized page interspersed throughout the whole book.
That character just became so profound in the storytelling, didn't it?
It did.
Wow, that is amazing. What did you learn, like writing the book? You're already a published author before this, you're an academic writer.
Yeah.
Writing this kind of genre is a different journey, it's a different process. What did you learn about that?
Totally. Well, I had to learn how to do scene writing, dialogue. That memoir is not an autobiography. You have to be very selective. Fortunately, I had a good editor who cut about 5 different chapters at different times. And you have to learn to be able to take really good feedback, which I knew already from being a researcher. And yeah, I learned so much. A lot of memories came back to me as I was writing, because I did a master's in writing your first draft. And at the 1st of January, we had to write 1,000 words a day. And so I did, and sometimes a bit more. And I was amazed at all the memories that started to surface for me that it's really been buried.
That's fantastic. I mean, It's cathartic too, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, did you find that?
I did. It was very therapeutic, but quite distressing too at times. But as a therapist, I've studied lots of techniques and taught lots of people. There's a wonderful technique called tremoring, where you release the emotions from your body. And that's what I did after writing my 1,000 or 1,500 words a day. I just lie on the floor and do the tremoring. It's a particular technique, people can look it up. And that was really helpful.
Oh, that's phenomenal, that's phenomenal. What about publishing? You're working with myself and the team at Ocean Reeve Publishing. What did you learn about that process?
That it's quite a long process.
Everybody says that.
Yeah, well, and it needs to be. It needs to be, and I discovered that there are a lot of stages and processes, and each one is necessary. And what I have particularly liked with doing the publishing through you is the brilliant editor, because I was a little different in the way I wrote this book. It's not in the past tense. I wrote it in the present tense to make it feel more immediate. And because Boa spoke in the present tense, that's my character, my tree character in the book.
The whole story had to.
Yeah, but she found a way where it could be present and past. I really struggled with that, but she nailed it.
That's fantastic.
And I loved her for that.
That's good.
Yeah, and then the proofreader, brilliant. I've had wonderful comments from, very seasoned published authors who've said what a good proofreader, because there's Portuguese in the book, she got the right spelling. There's the names of African trees in the book, she got the right spelling, the punctuation, everything's brilliant.
That's so good. I mean, it is a process, it is something that takes time, but when we're looking at the other end of the journey we're at now, this part of the journey, it's so important that those steps are taken so that we can do this with pride, because now when we're looking at taking it out into the market, that confidence that you have behind the publication is so important, and we want the readers to feel that. Let's talk about them for a moment. Who's the book aimed at? Who's the target market?
Well, it's really, I've found it can go across age groups, but it's particularly for people who are interested in the political history in South Africa and other parts of Africa because my mother did a lot of work in Zambia, so that's covered. She set up the Consumers Association in Zambia and the breastfeeding clinic and the Red Cross, and
Wow.
she's a very remarkable woman. And that's why I wrote the book, was really to honor her. And then my story happened to come into it, but initially it was just to talk about her. And people who love trees and nature, because there are trees in just about every place I've lived. You'll learn about the trees for that area. And it takes you on a cultural journey through the different places I've lived. So
I think the nature aspect of it is very warming when it comes to reading a story like yours.
Yeah.
And it's where, you know, the majority of readers will connect the greatest, because they can't all say they've lived your life
Yes.
that they have in Africa.
No.
And that connecting with nature and connecting with the trees is a really strong element of what's going to be marketable within the story.
Yes.
So let's talk about the feedback you've had. We've got some reviews up on the banner there. And
Yep.
we'll show you Franceska's website soon, so you can go and check out some more. But tell us what's been said about the book.
Well, I've had the most wonderful reviews. I've had it said that this is the book that keeps on giving. I just got a review back this week from a social worker, because that's my profession. She said, "Thank you for the gift of this book. It's inspirational." I've had other people say, other publishers before I came to you, saying that this book, the content, it's well constructed and movingly told. I've had other people say, this is a book from the heart.
Oh, that's what you want to hear. And so early on in the launch of a book, to have that feedback, and it just lifts the confidence of the author to take the next step and the next step, which, you know, since you and I, we were standing at my place holding the books in hand.
Yes.
Since that moment, you've been on radio, the book launch, you're going over to WA soon, you've got another interview with an overseas journalist soon. All that activity is a testament to the energy that you've been putting into this whole journey, which is so good for me as a publisher to sit back and see that. And arriving here today and hearing how many copies Franceska's already sold, you better be in quick, because, well, we can reprint. Well, it looks like we're going to need to. So we just recapped basically what I know is coming up for you over the coming months. But what about you as a writer? What's coming up there?
Well, I've got a number of ideas I'm toying with, but I really just need to get this out in the world and put all my energy there. But lots of people seem to think I'm going to write other books. So,
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, so I think so.
Good.
Yeah.
Look, I don't usually do this at the Creative Corner interviews, but because of the way that this book is written and the journey that we've had with Franceska has been so fantastic, my team have thoroughly enjoyed it, I'm going to ask you to read a short passage of the book for the viewers here.
Yep.
So take a moment, guys. Let's absorb this little reading from Franceska, and then we'll talk about how you can get yourself a copy.
Okay.
Take it away.
All right. The Boab tree and I are born from the strong, tangled roots of the tree of life, as were my mother and grandmother before me. Our upside-down life is like the upside-down tree, the Boab. As with the Boab, we have proven to be hardy and at times seemingly indestructible. I imagine the trunk becomes my spine, with one vertebrae placed on top of the other, joined by the sinews, sap between the muscles. As a child and teenager, I climbed up the tree like a baby kangaroo into her mother's pouch. My pouch is the uppermost branches that I can reach, from which I can look down and hide from those that I am fleeing, from the hits raining down on me that become heavy and painful. For a while, all is quiet. I'm not answering anyone's calls, not letting on where I am. From these branches, it is a light step away onto the clouds, where the heaviness is shed and the branches shed their leaves when more sunlight is needed. I talk to my tree as I sit and am held in Boa Boa's embrace of branches and lush leaves.
Wow. Okay, so you can see why I asked Franceska to read some of her book out to us today, so you guys can get a feel of that heart and soul that the Creative Corner interview is here to do. Franceska, I want to thank you so much for welcoming us into your home today and being able to talk to you about your journey as an author and about the publication. Very grateful, thank you.
My pleasure, and I appreciate all your assistance.
It ain't over yet. Okay guys, now it's your turn to go and check out the website. It's up on the screen, plus her social media. Keep an eye on the journey Franceska is on, because she's making a huge impact with this publication, Under the Boab Tree. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Creative Corner.